Let's begin linking with what we finished the other day, the day before. You remember that newsflash about the Pope expressing certain things that greatly disturbed the Muslim world. Well, there have been, as was expected, comments from the Muslim world that, of course, unleashed a bit of discomfort, right? Which they logically had because of these statements. And, well, there are several newspaper clippings that you can see of how, of course, the protests were noticed. And this seems to be, in quotes, that it forced the Pope a little to have to ask for forgiveness. But have you heard him literally apologize? Did he ask for forgiveness? No, he didn't ask for it. He said that his words had been misinterpreted. But he didn't apologize at all, right? Well, the controversy is still alive. And curiously, in one of these articles, you know that when this happened, there were some ambassadors who were called for consultations by their country. This is an extreme within the world of diplomacy, very serious, when consultations are done to an ambassador placed in another country. And there were 3 countries in particular, apart from Morocco, that did precisely this. And they are 3 extremely interesting countries. And later I'm going to tell you why. This is taken from a press clipping. It is in Catalan. You can see how they say, the authorities of Yemen, Egypt and Libya also regretted the offense to the Muslim world. These 3 countries did this. They called their ambassadors. Why do I mention these 3 countries specifically? I want you to retain these 3 names, Yemen, Egypt and Libya, because when we deal with the topic of prophecies, you will see that these 3 countries are mentioned by name in a book called Daniel and in a chapter which is number 11. Well, there is a slight change. Yemen. It does not appear there. Another name appears, but later we will explain why that name appears and not this one. But I wanted to leave you wondering about this because it is precisely one of the strongest parts of all these conferences that we are going to discuss. But we're not going to deal with it yet. Let's see. Well, we continue to see how, in addition, Islamic fundamentalists call to destroy the Vatican. And, you know, there has been a direct threat from Al-Qaeda. Furthermore, not only about the Vatican, but about the Pope himself. Why am I mentioning this to you? Well, because also in these conferences on prophecies, we are going to deal precisely with this topic. And you will see the relationship between one thing and the other. Very surprising, by the way. And here, well, more attitudes that have been happening. And notice how even Al-Qaeda says, yesterday a slogan was posted on the internet that said, "We will conquer Rome as the prophet promised." The thing is strong. Conquering Rome. Well, Rome is in Europe. You already know that, right? So this can mean a lot. Because what is in Rome? If not the Vatican, the theoretical emblem of the Christian world. And look at this. The Pope's words can incite hatred, and I hope they do not lead to the start of a war of civilizations between the Christian West and the Muslim world. The highest Islamic authority in the area, the Mufti of Jerusalem, declared yesterday to the Vanguardia. Mohammed Hussein Marwan, a 65-year-old Muslim, stated that according to the Prophet Muhammad, the day will come when we will conquer Rome. Referring to the Pope's statements, Sheikh Salah said that it is a call to all the peoples of Europe to unite around the American Zionist position, hostile to everything that is Muslim, Arab and Palestinian. I don't know if you are realizing how little by little terms are appearing. That it seems that one thing does not have much to do with another, but that, thanks to the topics that we have been dealing with, we realize that between the Zionism, which is nothing more than the movement in favor of the Israelite nation, along with America, the United States, and the Vatican, are 3 names that are already beginning to go very closely together. And you see how this has a lot to do with the prophecy that we are going to try to explain here in very short time. And now, after this, we are going to deal with today's topic. But first, I would like to comment. I don't know if you've heard the news today. There has been interesting news from José María Aznar. You know who José María Aznar is, right? Former president of the Spanish government, Popular Party. And he has made some truly impressive statements, because in the United States, he has done nothing other than stir up controversy again, saying that there is a lot of demand for the West to apologize for everything and for the Pope to apologize, but that he has never heard Muslims apologize for invading Spain for 800 years, right? So he is making such strong statements that the socialist government had already said that where is he going with this, okay? Since it can generate even more controversy. But look, that's what I was telling you. Things don't just happen. An objective has to be met, and certain people are used to achieve that, and they are going to create, well, what? Confrontation. Everyone is fanning that fire. But anyway, let's leave it there. I'm sure it's going to lead us to much more, because sooner or later, it will take us to what we will see further on. And we're going to discuss a topic that we have titled I.N.W.O, Illuminati New World Order. That is the New World Order of the Illuminati, or the Illuminated. And it is a topic that is really impressive. You will see that it is like a continuation of everything we have discussed so far, but that also puts some cherries on the cake, okay? Let's start with a text that is found in the Bible as well, in the book of John, chapter 16 and verse 13. But when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth, for he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. This is a prophecy. It is a prophetic biblical text, and referring to things that Jesus himself said, and he is not saying anything other than, after he would leave, the Holy Spirit, which is the one who was going to descend to earth, and according to the prophecy, to make known the things that will come in the future. And we move on to another text, Ephesians 6:10-13, words described by the Apostle Paul, who begins to say, Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And look at this verse. This verse is curious, huh? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, albeit against human beings alone, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Here this apostle is expressing nothing more than that behind human movements there are certain spiritual powers, quite macabre, of darkness, which are the ones that move many things, and against which we are warned, right? We're going to move on to a writing, but first I would like to tell you, we who have been seeing that behind all these things there is a great Luciferian power through this world of Luciferian Freemasonry, worshippers of Satan, who fully believe that this character exists and there is evidence of it. I want to ask you, should we know the plans of this Lucifer, his tricks, or is it better not to know? What do you think? Yes or no? Is it better to ignore everything? It is better to know, to be prepared, because you have to fight it, someone says. That's what's logical, right? And also precisely the Apostle Paul is saying this here, right? That we have to be prepared for that. Well, look at this writing that appears from Ellen White, that lady I quoted. Check out what she wrote very prophetically. When Satan's deceptive power will be so great that if it were possible, he would deceive the very elect, our discernment must be sharpened by divine enlightenment, that we may not be ignorant of Satan's devices. By giving us the cooperation of the holy angels, God has made it possible for our work to be a glorious success. Look, this lady is also basically saying the same thing. We must know Satan's tricks for something. What you said before, right? Let's look at another interesting quote that is quite interesting. What really worries Satan? Do you think this character would be worried about a football match? Can he worry about any nonsense like the lottery? Look at what he really worries about. According to this lady, nothing disturbs Satan so much as our knowledge of his devices. Let's move on to the next text. There is nothing that the great deceiver, this is Satan, fears so much as that we shall become acquainted with his devices. In other words, as she says, if we come to know the plans, the purposes of this character, he will be enraged. And if Satan is enraged, he will not do anything good for the people who precisely realize and know his plans and denounce the things he has planned, right? At least by knowing what has been done in the past by him and all those that are linked to him. Therefore, we must always be prepared for the possible opposition that this may entail in many different ways. But here it is. If we are to be brave or we are to be chicken, there is no alternative. Well, today we are going to look at a topic that could make you perhaps change your perspective on the level of, general politics, the economy, the social world, perhaps even your religious feelings. Because what you're going to see today is a truly impressive topic. If I explain the history a little, it all started more or less in 1990. There was an inventor of role-playing games called Steve Jackson. Does this name sound familiar to you? No, right? It's normal. This man was precisely planning to make a game that would be called I.N.W.O, the Illuminati New World Order. And curiously, in this game, Jackson predicts things that had to happen in the future, but that you, like me, have witnessed these events that have already happened. Some haven't happened yet, but these, many of them, already have. In this game, the plans of the Illuminati, which are the leadership of World Luciferian Freemasonry, would serve to direct the world to that New World Order. All of you who have been here have already acquired knowledge on this. And you will see that precisely it has a lot to do with the prophecies that we are going to study, both biblical and from the writings of Ellen White. Well, it seems that Jackson knew very well the plans of these people, to the point that it seems someone was not interested on this game coming out on the streets, to be accessible to people in general. You know, Jackson himself recounts a raid that he suffered, and if you want, I can tell you the website where you can find it. It's www.sjgames.com/ss/. If you want to enter here, and we'll realize what it says. I'm going to read it to you. He himself relates it in the following way. On the morning of March the 1st, 1990, without any warning, a force of armed Secret Service agents accompanied by Augustine police and at least one civilian expert from the telephone company occupied the Steve Jackson gaming offices and began searching for computerized equipment. The GURPS cyberpunk writer's residence was also invaded. A large amount of equipment was confiscated, including 4 computers, 2 laser printers, some loose hard drives, and a wide variety of hardware. One of the computers was the one that ran the Illuminati BBS program. He says that the game company, Steve Jackson, fought back in court and ultimately won, but almost went bankrupt financially. The investigation was due to an alleged fraud committed by the company due to the activities of hackers, computer system invaders, and the fact that the company promoted the hacker magazine called Frack. However, this accusation and the affidavit seemed to make little sense, and the judge ruled on the case, awarding Steve Jackson Games $50,000 plus an additional $250,000 for attorney fees. You know who was in charge of that country's secret service in the United States? No? No. George Bush, but the father of the current president. He was the one in charge of the CIA. And, well, you know that curiously he also belongs to the Skull and Bones Lodge, like his own son, the current president of the United States, Masonic lodges. Does this have anything to do with it? We'll see. Well, it seems that someone didn't really like these plans to come to light. But at the end of the game, which began to be prepared in the early 1990s, it came to light in 1995, and curiously, the year before, when it was presented in a way that was a little more for awards reason, perhaps, it won the award in 1994 for the best card game. And this card game was sold, and there were many people who bought it. But you know, now it can no longer be obtained. If you ask for it, they will not send it to you anymore. It has already disappeared from stock. Thank God it's in my possession. I keep it well kept because I don't like people handling it, because I have it as proof, so that people don't say, oh, this guy just made it up. No, I have it stored at home. If anyone wants to see it, I will very gladly show it to them. Today, what we are going to see is nothing more than scanned images of that game, so that you can all see it here. And now we are going to show you precisely the official internet page, where the award obtained is displayed, see? Below that box, first prize in 1994 for the best card game. I mean, these are not jokes. This game exists, okay? But anyway, how did this man find out about this whole Illuminati plan? Was it really that someone entered some Illuminati's computers and took out all this information? Or is it that he was a little involved in this Masonic world and knew it? It's really not very clear. It is known that he, Steve Jackson, also published a letter in which he denounced these plans that appear in the cards in a perhaps slightly more described way. I honestly don't know the truth, but I just know that the cards talk about some things, and you are going to see it in truly impressive images. Please place yourself in the decade of 1990s. You will see events that happened a long time later. And now I'm going to ask you to please open your eyes of your understanding, not just the physical ones, so that you capture everything that these cards really transmit, and that will give you essential knowledge of the Illuminati's plans, and consequently, the plans of Lucifer, who is the one behind all this. If anyone does not believe that this game was made in the year that I told you, this is the box, and you see 1995, and then the copyright also appears in the specific year. Therefore, this game was made on the date that I am telling you, saying these are not jokes. And now you're going to see some images here, which I suppose you all remember. What happened on September the 11th, 2001? Do you remember it? The attack on the Twin Towers, right? We can remember it perfectly. The impact of the Twin Towers in New York. Here you see it. Look at these images, okay? Retain them in your retina. Now, look at the first card of this game that we are going to show you here. 11 years before it happened, someone was already preparing this game with this card. The Twin Towers, with an explosion in the middle area, slightly closer to the top. How could someone know this 11 years before? Is it normal to know things so much time in advance for no reason? But there is something more interesting. I don't know if you've noticed that what does the title of the card say? In English, terrorist nuke, which is basically nothing more than a nuclear explosion. How can it be? Has anyone told us that the Twin Towers was a nuclear explosion? They haven't, right? Didn't they say it was only the impact of a large plane? Someone mentions what they did say is that it had reached an impressive temperature inside to melt the structure. There it is. There it is. Nobody understood, not even the best construction experts, how could the concrete, the steel, be left to ashes so that everything collapsed due to the impact of a plane, and the temperature it could reach because of the kerosene, plus the speed. It was impossible. It can only be explained through a micronuclear explosion. And as it seems, there are clear scientific reports that speak about this. Do you also remember an explosion in the hotel in Bali? Also, there was an explosion where the scientists themselves say that there was a 0.1 kiloton explosion. How can it be? On the other hand, this does not transcend public opinion. How can it be? But instead, curiously, this card nails it. But now I warn you that you're going to see something that, yes, this is surprising, because to think that this was done 11 years before it happened, 6 years before, maybe if you want, or 7 years before with its publication at streets level. Look now at the card that comes. Can you pass on to the next slide? Let's see if it works. Can I say one thing? Someone says, tell me. The way the tower was collapsing caught my attention. It seems that it is controlled, like when they demolish a building so as not to disturb the surrounding buildings. It explodes in a way so as to go inwards, and that way the moment the tower begins to fall, the building did not fall on its side, nor did it fall on another building or anything. No. They had it controlled from inside so that it would fall on itself. Yes, and I understand you. And they put the explosive in a specific place, not in any area. That catches my attention. Yes, well, let's leave it here. Look at this other card. Population reduction. What do you see here? It's New York, the Empire State. And behind it, where the Twin Towers are, can you notice that smoke starts to come out halfway up the tower? And what does the smoke form? A skull shape, right? A demonic face, something like that. Something shocking. Well, I'm going to warn you one thing before seeing the following. Whoever doesn't want to look should not look. I'm warning you because it can hurt your sensibilities. These are images filmed by television cameras. This was broadcasted live, so they are not jokes. We're going to show the photographs in sequence, and you are going to see some faces, some totally demonic aspects. Here we see the first image. Look, if we enlarge it, look at the strange smoke. Don't you see something here? Right, yeah. Look at this situation. Okay? Now I want you to look at the next one. See whichever you want, and this other one was not as widespread. Look at what appears in the white smoke of the second tower. Are they simply coincidences? There were people who said it may be a coincidence. The smoke is like this, yes? Do you see it well? When I saw these images, the truth is that in Catalan we say, "Em van esgarrifar," they shook me. It doesn't give me a very good vibe. And for the smoke to make coincidentally these shapes is quite a big coincidence. Someone adds, but then if you search on the internet, all the images that appear about it are from the same place, from the second tower. And there are even other images, other photos of another similar face from the same place of the second tower, also before it collapsed. And in other images they try to search the body, and it always comes from the same point, from the second tower. The thing is that they don't grab an image from over here and from over there from different points. It all forms the same shape in the same place. Well, you can see it, right? In other words, this isn't a prank. This was not a photographic montage, nor a filming montage when it was being made. Well, you see, nothing but demonic spirits appear. I don't know if you knew, but while there were people who speculated that, well, these are imaginations, they are coincidences, there was a man, a broadcaster for a Protestant Christian radio station, who received some calls from former Satanists. You know, in the United States, as in other countries, there are churches of Satan, direct worshippers of the devil, but they're in a slightly more open way. Well, people among them who had left told him that when they were doing fire rituals, the metaphysical appearances in more or less corporeal form of fiery devils appeared in these sacrifices of fire. The fire that they made had precisely this shape, and they revealed it to this man on the radio. Can a person do this that easy? If you realize this is not very normal, right? Well, this does nothing more than link everything that's happened on 9/11 with this hidden world of darkness, with which Lucifer is working directly with these Illuminati people to create this new world order. And this is shocking. Some of the most powerful demons of Satan's kingdom were known precisely as fire demons. And it was these demons that the people of ancient times, even the Jews themselves, who followed God, what it says in the biblical writings, they even came to worship and sacrifice their children to these fiery demons, to the famous Moloch, and also to Lilith, who is the owl. Remember? Those of you who were at the first conference, that famous owl which appears on the dollar bill and so on, because it is nothing more than the fiery sacrifices. And this is all linked precisely to everything we are seeing. Notice how things that seem at first to have no relationship, everything is always linked to the same thing. But hey, let's now look at other cards. And what else happened on that 11th? Do you remember it? What else was attacked? Who remembers it? The Pentagon. Here's the footage. Now, do you see the famous plane? How it crashed? Do you see it? The plane? Where is the plane? Well, someone must have taken it bit by bit, because this was the moment of impact shortly after, and when the huge plane that they say hit here should have been full of pieces. No one found anything. You know, the statements that were made by the chief fireman were like they were passing on the hot potato, saying, no, go and ask the other guy. No one answered where that device was. Well, besides, you can see the grass intact, right? If that plane of enormous proportions had hit this building, you see only 3 floors. What would have happened? Well, it would have eaten all that dirt to make this hole, and the dirt is also intact along with the grass. What strange things, right? And besides this, officially a plane hit there. Yes, in the Twin Towers, it was seen very clearly, but in the Pentagon? Now look curiously at this other image. There you have Steve Jackson's card game. What do you see? The Pentagon also on fire. What's a coincidence, hey? That in such an old game, and wow, these things match. But let's see some more things. Let's see more cards. Combined disasters. Where does this card place us? In London, right? Big Ben? Falling. But combined disasters, what else happened? Do you remember? Wasn't there also an attack on Madrid, apart from London? Hasn't there also been in Indonesia? These are combined disasters, explosions in different places under the same concept. And they are the radical Muslim world attacking the Western world. And as you saw in the other conferences, everything was promoted by the Illuminati, making the Muslim world work and making the theoretical Christian world work to confront each other, to create that third world war. Let's see some more things. What happens as a consequence of these misfortunes? Well, the reforms are swept away. What type of reforms are being planned? Well, freedoms and rights are curtailed. Look, for example, on El País, a newspaper. August the 2nd, 2006, Marc Carrillo, professor of constitutional law at the Pompeu Fabra University. The attacks of 9/11 in 2001 achieved a long-range objective, reducing the guarantees of fundamental rights, which are one of the constitutional hallmarks of the democratic form of government. The approval of the Patriot Act 2001 in the United States Congress marked the beginning of a series of measures clearly harmful to the rights of liberty guaranteed by the Constitution of 1787, which have found emulation in other European states, especially in the Great Britain. Now, do you agree or not? But this would not have been possible or admitted by anyone if a chaotic situation had not first been generated. Do you understand? Nobody wants to accept a curtailment of freedoms achieved through years of many struggles, and suddenly someone says, look, all this is suppressed, and there is no reason. Security, fear, terror. You understand? Someone says, oh, sorry, I want to say one thing. On September the 12th, I was on a return plane that's left London at 7 in the afternoon. It was a 2-hour flight to Girona. And before that, we were waiting 3 hours at London Airport in the Newton. This part of the comment is not heard well. That's mistreatment of each person, and without us having done anything, then on the plane, they checked the tickets twice. Each one had to recognize their suitcase and be checked again from head to toe, everything. With that delay, I ended up arriving here at 3 or something in the morning. I mean, they really told you a lot about your rights. They treat you very badly, seeing that you have some combinations. For example, I was waiting for a bus to take me to Girona, or if you had rented a car, they would give you another one, since the airport offices were tightly closed. All this without the right to anything, not even to make a phone call, nothing. The positions we had at the top, those at the bottom, the government of Great Britain. That is why we must pay attention to how in these situations people are going to agree to have their rights cut. It's the easiest way to do it. Now, I would like you to look at this curious card from a domestic social situation. See, this is an average home. Well, not any average home, right? But what do you see? A man stabbed in the back and a lady who looks like she's drunk, something that's killing her, right? What a strange situation this one, right? That they kill each other in their homes. Have you noticed that we hear a lot about this lately? Parents who kill their children, children who kill their parents, spouses who kill each other. Has this ever happened in such a wild disproportion like now? Isn't it true? Can you have any logical explanation for this? Is it that simply do we become crazy because of stress? But careful, there are many of these things that happen in towns where stress does not exactly work like in big cities. Is this normal? Yes, everywhere. Yes. Notice that also, many times the descriptions are from totally normal people, right? But suddenly they do something really crazy. Why do they do these crazy things? Is it just a momentary wire crossing? Notice that due to a momentary crossing of wires, people do stab anyone in the back and that's it. But they don't take pleasure in that death. And it goes on, and after she is dead, they are still doing real savage things. This is not normal. Let's see if this has an explanation. Look at these other two cards that come later. Witches. Witches? What do witches have to do with it? Let's see another card. Psychic phones? Astrological consultations? Could this have something to do with it? Look, I don't know if you are seeing it, but in each card, there are always appearing, here we have marked with little circles, so that you can see that everything has its relationship precisely with the hidden world of Lucifer and the Illuminati, the triangle, okay? The famous pyramid. There is always this hidden sign in these cards, meaning that they are using all this through their threads, their extensive spider web, to prepare the world for a certain situation which we already told you about. Let's take a look at a statistic. Look what it says. Well, it's a bit long. Well, this statistic tells us that 80% of Spaniards define themselves as Catholic, but only 1 in 4 considers that they study the true religion, etc., right? And then the statistics go down and tell us that a big percentage of these people do consider themselves or state that they have ever done something related to spiritualism, although sometimes they would not define it that way. Astrological consultations, palm readings, tarot cards, etc. Others that have gone to consultations to ask for intercession for love affairs, for the 1001 things that sometimes seem absurd to us, but that, apart from moving a lot of money, makes many people have a really bad time. Because apart from the people who do it out of foolishness, there are people who are truly committed to these things, and they cause satanic spiritual manifestations to take effect. And I suppose that more than one of you must know of cases like that. So, can there be a clear link between putting yourself in the hands of these people and then these people reacting over time and doing these impressive savageries? Let's see a couple of quotes of Ellen White. Well, first it was here. What is striking is that in parallel with religious skepticism, 1 in 5 citizens admits that they have at some time consulted a psychic, a healer, or a witch. But truly, it is much more than 1 in 5. I am completely convinced. You just need to talk a little in depth with the people around you, and you will see that if it wasn't them, it was a relative or someone around them that has done it. Look at this quote from Ellen White precisely. In this degenerate age, Satan holds control over those who depart from the right and venture upon his ground. He exercises his power upon such in an alarming manner. I was directed to these words, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. This is Colossians 2:18. Some, I was shown, gratify their curiosity and tamper with the devil. They have no real faith in spiritualism and would start back with horror at the idea of being mediums. Yet, they venture and place themselves in a position where Satan can exercise his power upon them. Such do not mean to enter deep into this work, but they know not what they are doing. They are venturing on the devil's ground and are tempting him to control them. This powerful destroyer considers them his lawful prey and exercises his power upon them, and that against their will. When they wish to control themselves, they cannot. They yielded their minds to Satan, and he will not release his claims but holds them captive. I'm going to make a point here. I'll tell you a personal experience with a couple I met, where she told me where her schizophrenia came from. You know, there are a lot of schizophrenics lately, right? Many are induced by having taken drugs, but many others do not come from drugs, but precisely from having entered places to project their self-esteem, to make their personality grow, etc. And you know, this girl confessed to me that it came from here, having taken classes like that and ending up schizophrenic. But not with the normal schizophrenia, but rather this girl told me that even loving her mother as much as she does, well, in order not to kill her mother, when she was already about to do it, she jumped out of the window from I don't know what height herself, realizing that something was motivating her to do harm and she didn't want to. Well, this is not the only case that I know of. I know of others. And there's another curious thing, I'll tell you. I saw a report of the top police specialist who goes to police stations around the world, basically teaching police inspectors, teaching them how to know the profiles of psychopaths, how they are, more or less, by the things they do. Well, after 1 hour of the program, the greatest specialist in the matter ends up saying that after these psychopathic theorists, there are other things, other characters, who can only be defined in one way. They are demonized. Because there was no possible explanation in the world of psychology to define it if it were not by a demon possession. This was told to me by another person who told me the same thing working in a psychiatric center. that they knew there were people who were mentally disturbed and others who were possessed, but that they could not express it publicly because the commotion would be very big. You understand? Well, let's see another quote from this lady. I was shown that Satan cannot control minds unless they are yielded to his control. Is this true? Yeah? Are any of you directly influenced to do something barbaric like this? If you haven't been involved in weird things, you won't have this tendency. Only if the person's mind has opened that door for Lucifer to do this work. And these are not jokes. This happens. Let's see now something that is also quite interesting. May it be that Satan or Lucifer uses these geniuses that you see in this card. Quite some faces they have drawn on this card, right? Evil geniuses for a better tomorrow. Could it be that, well, obviously not all scientists, but some of them are working precisely for these powers, creating things that theoretically improve tomorrow, and in reality what they do is quite the opposite? Is that possible? I'm going to quote you something. Do you know Marcel Vogel? I guess not. And he is an occultist, this man, and he was one of the original inventors of IBM computers. IBM computers will sound familiar to you, right? He explained that he had received the inspiration for his computer code during a psychic dream, which is nothing more than other spiritual trances of the satanic world. And then, bam, invents the IBM computer. And here we see the photo. You know this man? Mr. Edison. You know who he is. Among other things, he experimented with recording devices, transmitters, telegraphs, telephones, phonographs, electricity, incandescent lamps, and electric railways. He registered more than 1,000 patents, he alone, 1,000 patents of his invention, and among them, the kinetoscope. But you know, this man was a determined theosophist. Do you know what theosophy is? Does theosophy sound familiar to you? A doctrine that seeks to achieve direct knowledge of God through infused intuition or illumination without the need for reason and faith. And do you know what it is closely linked to? Freemasonry. What coincidences, eh? And you know, the leaders of the New Age, which is another branch of Freemasonry, and technological leaders came to say, notice, the inventors of the Apple computer, you know the Apple brand, yes, right? They were occultists. To prove that the computer had a hidden base, look at what they did. Let's see it. Here you have the first Apple gadget. Now it looks a little outdated, doesn't it? You see, 1976. This page is their official one, hey? It's not an invention. Apple's first machine, called the Apple I, sold for what amount of money? $666.66. It couldn't be $123, I don't know, 667. No, 666. The number of the beast. You remember it? We have not yet gone into exact detail of what it is. Well, another curious thing, they sold a number of figures that rise to 175 units. Neither one more nor one less. Now, let's add up. 1 plus 7 plus 8 and 5. Again, we get 13. And 13, do you remember what it was? Lucifer's number. Of that false Messiah. Well, they did nothing more than prove or denote that they were precisely involved in the world of the occult. And by the way, do you know the Apple logo? What it is? You know it very well, don't you? An apple bitten on one side. What does it remind you of? Adam and Eve, right? The story in which, in Eden, they transgressed, sinning against God by biting an apple, symbol of what? of the rebellion of Satan, of Lucifer against God, which passed on to humanity. Well, that is their symbol, its emblem, rebellion against God. And I guess that, well, you may have seen the Da Vinci Code, the movie, yeah? Here's the advertising for the film. And who intervenes? Also helping the film. Don't you see a little apple there, bitten on one side? Well, they also collaborated in the same thing. They realize how everything is linked to the entire Masonic intrinsic, once again, Luciferian. It's down here, I don't know if you see it. Yeah? Well, you see how things that apparently have nothing to do with each other, when you start pulling the thread, it always leads us to the same thing. The developer of the serographic process, which is photocopying, also credited his invention to a psychic dream. The Xerox brand was the first to make photocopies. Well, this man also invented it precisely because he was involved in the same thing. And the New Age author Alvis Bailey reveals that the atomic bomb emerged from a first ray from Ishram, a demon working in conjunction with a fifth group, scientists working for the American government. What things, eh? Discoveries that have been brutal, and you see in whose hands. But do they only do this? Also notice you said something before. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. What? So, do they control diseases? Or do they release the diseases? Let us remember that the things that appear here are always what they use to create evil, precisely. Someone says, there's a card that you showed for population control. Yes, of course. The reduction of the population. Population reduction, because they plan for millions of people to be sacrificed in this world. Now we are going to see different ways in which they precisely act. And you will see how it fits with the prophecies that we will show, okay? Center for Disease Control. As its action, the CDC can provide relief to a devastated position whenever it can. If the CDC makes a direct attack, it can destroy a place. This can use biological warfare and gets a plus 15. This is all part of the game. The explanation of how this game works. Well, what does it mean? They can control a disease, but be careful. That they can do with a direct attack too. Through this? It's curious, huh? And we are only sold a good image of things, but the other side is appearing here. And the famous bacteriological war is not new either. We will look at all this a little now. Let's see a text that is also prophetic. Matthew 24, verse 7, the second part of this text. Well, let's see it all. It says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be" what? "Famines and pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. Epidemic plagues." Translation would be the same, right? And does all this happen just because? Or is it also caused by this Lucifer through these agents he uses? Also look at this pair of writings by Ellen White. Well, here we can also see the epidemics card. See, this is used by them. Satan is working in the atmosphere. He is poisoning the atmosphere, and here we are dependent upon God for our lives, our present and eternal lives. When was this writing made? Look at the date, 1890. And it said that Satan would poison the atmosphere. In those times, was it possible in 1890? Little could be done compared to what can be done now. This lady got it right. For no reason? But what year did the Industrial Revolution begin, someone asks. Yes, but of course, there it is. The matter began. But now? Don't many more things happen? And that is attributed to things that sometimes have nothing to do with the real issue. Now we're also going to see another quote. It says, "God has not restrained the powers of darkness from carrying forward their deadly work of vitiating the air." one of the sources of life and nutrition with a deadly miasma. Here it seems that according to the prophecies, that they say God is not going to prevent this from happening. And it is happening, right? We have evidence every day that this is happening like this. Let's see more things. Famines will increase. Pestilences will sweep away thousands, this lady says. Dangers are all around us from the powers without and satanic workings within, but the restraining power of God is now being exercised. What does this mean, that the restrictive power of God is being exercised? Well, that perhaps if God left things to happen more, there would be total chaos. Do you understand what is extracted here? Let's see another card. Hunger. New World Order above. What do famines come from? Well, they are basically caused by wars. Do you remember the text that we taught before, Matthew 24:7, which says, "For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom"? It means wars, right? And what does all this cause? Well, hunger, but famines are also caused by other circumstances that we will see later. Now, why is that? Why would it be? Let's go to earthquakes. Wait, just a moment. Let's see. What are we saying? Are earthquakes also caused by these people? Well, obviously not all, because there have always been earthquakes, or haven't there been earthquakes all our lives? Well, of course, yes. But could it be that someone could cause earthquakes? Or is this a load of nonsense? Someone mentions, I heard something about Russia having this technology. Does this sound familiar to you? Look at this other card here. What does it say? Projector of what? Of earthquakes. We can see a drawing of a machine that emits waves towards the ground, and you see churches that break. It means that the earthquake occurs. Does anything like this exist? Or is it an invention and that's it? Well, during this month of May, in the afternoon, a documentary was released showing some very interesting images. They were talking about a gadget that the Soviet government had in the 70s. And the images are shown of how, in one of those vans from the 70s, they carried a certain device that seems to look from above as if they were just wheels. But they were projecting something, and earthquakes were created, which the camera filmed, but very serious earthquakes that even made them to flee as they could. And these are documentaries from the time of the Soviet government. They are not jokes, and they were broadcasted on television. But what happened to the Soviet republics? Communism fell, everything was dismembered, and the Soviet-Russian economy went into debacle. And then a government appeared that quickly went to buy the device, the United States. And you know, curiously, nothing has ever been heard from the machine. It is only known that the Russians said that they never, ever wanted to do a test on the tectonic plates, because the devastation would have been incredible, and they never wanted to do it. But I don't know if you knew, since the United States bought the machine, we have never heard of the machine again. But what we have heard about, and more, is the number of earthquakes happening that are increasing, and with much intensity. Could it be a coincidence? Apparently, it is not so much a coincidence. Let's see another card. Oh, and by the way, there's a report also that talks about how earthquakes, curiously, often coincide with nuclear explosions, with tests that have been done, and on the other hand, of course, we only see there has been an earthquake in such and such a place. It's a thing, hey? And this card, what is this card? A giant wave, right? This is a tsunami. A tsunami? Notice, do you see the little triangle placed here? A huge wave on a coast, a very tall building. Has there been a tsunami lately? Or has there not? What happened in Indonesia, in the famous area that was so devastated? Was that a coincidence? Did it happen because of the forces of nature, because a small earthquake happened and, ooh, a huge wave. Is it just for that reason? It can happen because it can happen due to natural causes. But this one in particular, was it due to natural causes? I would like you to see the photo that is not faked, but is authentic of the wave. It's really impressive, isn't it? Look, tall building on the coast, and where does the wave get to? I don't know if you could make a comparison as if a mirror was placed in the middle. Doesn't it seem the very same in reverse as the card? How could anyone trace this almost 11 years before? It's really impressive, isn't it? Well, let's see what a researcher named Joe Vials says. The article begins with a speech who was the Secretary of Defense of the United States, William S. Cohen, in April 1997, and says, "The Indian government knew that the earthquake of December 26, 2004 was not normal, and the next day he rejected George Bush's invitation to join a coalition made up of Russia, China, and Brazil, forcing him to suspend his nuclear programs." Remember that the most affected part was which province? Do you remember? In the Indonesian area? It was Aceh. And what was happening a long time ago in that area, in that province? Well, they were in guerrilla wars because someone wanted to make them enter the New World Order, and they refused. And we don't really know how, but there were some guerrillas financed by someone who were continually creating a chaotic situation in the area. And suddenly, a tsunami hit. Either you want to enter the New World Order, or you pay. There is no alternative, right? On December 28, the President of India warned Bush that his military forces should stay away from India's coast to avoid a disaster. Let us remember that some ships from the American force were precisely there, and they wanted to help those they could. Were the Americans there by chance with their ships to help? Notice that the government was saying the opposite. The Indian Daily News editorial asked the following questions about the tsunami. Let's see it here. Was it a show of force by some country to show the entire region the destruction it can cause? Given the level of devastation and the fact that India is a regional power in Southeast Asia, the Indian Navy has an obligation to investigate and inform the world of its findings. So they did not see clear at all that the tsunami happened for no reason. You realize? We are talking about people who seem to know what they are talking about. Vials directly accuses the United States of perpetrating a mass murder, and does so based on several irregularities in the official US version of events, which if you look for, it has many. There was also a BBC documentary broadcasted a few weeks ago where it was said how nuclear tests could cause tsunamis, and they are documentaries that are made by serious people. And now we are going to look again at another writing by Ellen White, and notice what it says here. In the last scenes of this Earth's history, war will rage. There will be what? There will be pestilence, plague, and famine. The waters of the deep will overflow their boundaries. What does this mean? Well, that waters come out from where they are stipulated to be for life and eat up parts of the land in a wild way. Tsunamis, overflowing of the waters. Then also look at what this lady is prophesying. Property and life will be destroyed by fire and flood. We should be preparing for the mansions that Christ has gone to prepare for them that love him. It is curious, huh? The chaotic situation that this lady was describing in the 1800s, at the latest in the early 1900s, are these events that are happening now, when the world was not like this by any chance. Now look at a curious reaction that the population affected by the tsunami had. This is taken from the newspaper El País. that does nothing more than republish something that the New York Times published. Look what they write here. What is perhaps more dangerous is that the tsunami may have deepened religious and ethnic divisions. In Sri Lanka, in recent years, Buddhists have attacked dozens of churches. The Christians, according to them, are to blame for the tsunami. Do you see what these things can cause? Reactions between totally opposing religions. And adds that the Muslims of HA believe that the real punishment can come later if they do not follow divine beliefs. Now, I'm going to give you a preview of the prophetic matter. There is going to be a moment. You remember that we were talking about the Pope's statements and the Sunday? That seems they had nothing to do with one another. When we talk about prophecies, we are going to deal with this topic because there is much more to it than it seems. It is much more transcendental than it seems at first glance. And in one of the prophecies, it is said that there will be a mandatory day for rest for everyone. I've just mentioned a day. Keep this day in your mind. And the prophecy also speaks that, theoretically, due to people who will not want to jump through the hoop to do what will be mandatory, these people are going to be blamed for the amount of misfortunes that are going to happen as a consequence of this. And so, do you remember what we said in the last conference? In that section of the letter where a minority would precisely have to be punished for not wanting to jump through the hoop? Notice how things are coming together. Now, this is only a glimpse of this prophecy that will not take long to come to pass. But we are going to discuss this in depth soon. For now, let's continue to take a look at another card. International Meteorological Organization. Now, what do you see in the drawing? A plane that is carrying what? It's dragging the cloud there. Then this man is dressed as a scientific doctor, and he is pointing to a cyclone, saying, "You go there." How? How can this be? Does anyone handle the rain? Can cyclones be driven? Is this possible? Or is it pure science fiction? Because, I don't know if you've noticed, but lately they've been showing us movies in Hollywood about people who are evil, great supervillains, who cause things like that. And, of course, for us, it's science fiction, right? We watch a movie and say, well, this is a movie. There is a 007 movie which is not new called Tomorrow Never Dies, and the bad guy controls the weather to break the news. Well, there are several more movies like that. Yes, yes. And there are even more. And then, as we said, you also know who is behind the cinematography. We already talked to you a little about this, right? Well, let's see this also. The NASA about to create artificial rain. Could it be? Within approximately 5 years, we will be able to have enough technology to create rain artificially thanks to NASA. The project, which can be applied to subtropical areas such as Spain during the summer, can solve desertification problems, replacing some controversial measures such as water transfers and seawater desalination. The experiment will begin in Israel and could be applied in Spain. Why does it have to start in Israel? They could easily start in the Sahara, for example. They could even begin in the Gobi Desert. Why in Israel? Is this for no reason? Is it just that they like that land more to do things? We'll see precisely something very important. If we do not understand Israel's role in the end-time prophecies, which we are going to discuss some of them, we will not understand almost anything about what is happening and why it is happening. Take a look at two biblical texts. Isaiah 35, verse 7. We are talking about 600 years before Jesus and 2,600 years before us, right? And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water. In the habitation of jackals where each lay shall be grass with reeds and rushes. It is describing a desert place, but be careful, there will be plenty of water. Let's look at another text, Isaiah 44:3. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon your descendants, and my blessing upon your offspring. Do you know, there are people who are applying these texts to Israel. Jews and Protestants are talking about how these texts that were prophecies from, you see, how long ago, are going to have an application within a very short time in that land. Why? Well, let's see why. Well, this is taken precisely from the Foreign Affairs page of the Ministry of Israel. So, this is no joke, they are all true things, right? It is estimated that by 2020, Israel's population will increase by 42% to 8.5 million inhabitants. This will cause large increases in demand for agricultural products, but urban land and water use will also increase enormously. Do you realize how can they know that the population of Israel is going to rise to so many millions? How? Well, you know, they base this on some prophecies that say that before everything is over, the Jews are going to return to their land. That is a load of them. And based on this, and on statistics, because Jews from other parts of the world are increasingly flocking to Israel, they are planning this. The Jewish population is going to grow a lot in that land. So what are they going to need? Well, water, of course. That is why they work to make it rain, so that there is food for everyone, to create desert areas precisely in springs. Let's see another card. Oh my, what do we see here? A satellite, umbrella, raining, and a man below. Weather satellite. The card says, true weather satellites do not report the weather. They change it. Is that so? So the satellites that are there are only for predicting the weather or to alter weather. It appears in the Illuminati game. Is this possible? It carries on. It says, you can increase by 10 or decrease by 4 the power of any hurricane, rainstorm, or tornado. Careful. The game is saying that you can increase or decrease rains, hurricanes, tornadoes. Is it possible to master these incredibly strong physical elements? Pay attention to this. Hurricane, in another card. I don't know if you see the type of car and buildings. It seems more like Cuba or someplace like that, right? They are cars from there. What else? Tornadoes. We see here bungalows flying, also typical of areas of the United States, right? Who live in houses like that. Now look at this curious thing. The Japanese mafia is to blame for Katrina. What? Who says this nonsense? American meteorologist Scott Stevens declared that Hurricane Katrina was caused by the Japanese mafia as revenge for the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Stevens claims that they used a secret Soviet weapon based on an electromagnetic generator. Where does this news appear? Absurd Diari, an absurdnewspaper.com. Is this as absurd as it seems? It is put on the site so that people see it and laugh at this idea, at this concept. Someone says they had not been seen on the Mediterranean coast for 20 years. Now, to see a tornado on the Mediterranean coast is very normal. As old as I am, I had never seen one. And from a few years ago now, what is happening? Well, they say it's because there are more cameras that film everything, right? Is it just this? Well, here you see an image of what's happened in New Orleans, right? Fire caused by floods too. Seems like a contradiction, but of course those things happen. And let's see something else. Look at what appears here. Brief notices. Malaysia to fight air pollution with cyclones. By Chen Mei Yi. Wall Street Journal staff reporter. Wall Street Journal, Thursday, November the 13th, 1997, page 19. Kuala Lumpur. Malaysia's war against smog and fog is about to take a new turn. The government wants to create artificial cyclones to remove the haze that has plagued Malaysia since July. We will use special technology to create an artificial cyclone and in this way clean the air. Datuk Law Hieng Ding, Minister of Science, Technology and Environment. Yeah? Careful, this is totally true news. It does not appear in ridiculous newspapers. Far from it, it is reliable news. Could it be that this was done? Well, let's see another one. Giant storms, also known as typhoons and hurricanes, cause torrential rains that clear the smoke and are removed from the air. The Malaysian Cabinet and Finance Minister have approved the plan, Datuk Law said. A Malaysian company, BioCure SDN BHD, will sign a rapid memorandum of understanding with the Russian ruling party to produce the cyclone. Oh mother. Datuk Law refused to reveal the size of the cyclone that is to be generated or the mechanism of its operation. I don't have the details, he said. However, he did indeed say that the cyclone generated would be quite strong. Datuk Law also refused to talk about the price for creating this cyclone. Maybe you didn't know, but this cyclone arrived and absolutely nothing remained of the fog. A coincidence or something provoked? Somebody says, so that's why they already know the name of the cyclone that is going to follow? They have a long list of names and they name them, right? Although you already saw that last year they were short on the number of names they had, right? Of the amount that is being generated, which is not normal at all. You know that there was a treaty in the United Nations to ban geophysical weapons technology? Geophysical weapons are these weapons which can cause all these things that we have been citing. Would it be necessary for the United States to speak out on the matter of this technology if it did not exist? It would be absurd, right? And on the other hand, public opinion, like fools. Climate's change, they tell us, hey? Climate's change, the boy, the girl, and the whole family, yes. Well, here it also talks about the technologies that are also different, such as HARP technologies. We'll talk about this in some moment. It says they can be created with a low price of $200 per day. Well, it is cheap, right? The disaster you can cause for $200. Look, this is Hurricane Isabel. The image is beautiful, right? Of course, those that are below must see little beauty in it, right? But the truth is that it is a very beautiful image. Look at the sphere of the world, right? And this is the image of the satellite curiously stopped on September the 2nd, 2003 at 13:45 p.m. You know, when you see the sequence on the satellite, you see how it is forming and you see that strange things begin to happen in the middle of the eye of the hurricane, when normally the eyes of the hurricane are clean, right? But interestingly, if you stop the scene at 13:45, what happens? 1 plus 3, 4, plus 4, 8, plus 5, what is it? 13. What appears in the middle? A 5-pointed star. the Masonic star that we have talked about so many times, a sign of satanic power. How can that be? You know, what you see here, so small, was many kilometers in diameter, specifically 40 miles in diameter, about 65 kilometers. Is it easy for someone to create 65 kilometers of star in the middle of a hurricane eye? This image is not faked, okay? How can that be? Well, this is the sign of Satan. The sign that the Illuminati and satanic witchcraft use to say who is behind things. This did not happen for no reason. I don't know if you know, the Hurricane Isabel curiously coincides with a name of a queen that appears in the Bible, who was a lady called Jezebel, Elizabeth. The old name was Jezebel, and curiously, she was a lady who greatly attacked the people who believed in God, the Jews of that time, to the point of wanting to eliminate them in a brutal way. And on the other hand, you see, with this same name, it appears in satanic force. Not bad, right? The truth is that when I was able to look for this image, I was quite impressed. Well, let's keep moving forward. Have you heard of HARP? What is HARP? Does anyone know what HARP is? No idea, right? It's normal. They are English acronyms that would be High Frequency Active Auroral Research Programs. You know what an aurora borealis is? You've seen it, right? I've never been to those areas of the planet, but when we have seen it on television, it is truly wonderful. We can see how they begin to create layers of colors that rotate with each other. That is totally natural. That happens. It comes from the sun's rays, etc., etc. That is very normal. But careful, what we are talking about is not natural auroras, but rather caused auroras, which has nothing to do with the issue. Well, you know, this program is funded by the United States Air Force, strangely enough, the Navy and the University of Alaska. We're talking about the United States, of course. What is this? Well, this is HARP. What you see here, this field in the middle of this place, is a field full of antennas that, if we click, you will see what they are like. This is the official HARP page. This is their own. It's official. You see these antennas? These are the antennas. Let's see how HARP works. Let's read it. It says, the project will probably be sold to the public as a space shield against the entry of weapons into the national territory, or to the most naive as a system to repair the ozone layer. Does that sound familiar to you about the ozone layer? It needs to be repaired, etc., right? Because there's a hole and all that. And maybe it sounds familiar to you, the Star Wars project that was already since the Reagan era. It was to prevent a missile coming to the United States, and well, bam, they would destroy it with a special system. Well, this is HARP. He claims that his invention could also control the climate, a statement that has led Dr. Begich to conclude that if HARP operated at 100%, it could create climatological anomalies on both Earth's hemispheres, following the theory of resonance so used by the great Nikola Tesla in his inventions, a man who was alive many years ago and who was already working on all these types of waves. Therefore, the tropospheric electrojet wind systems are apparently correlated. One of the goals of HARP is to modulate the electrojet currents and thus affect the intensity and direction of the zonal and jet winds. On the other hand, being able to heat certain hostile areas of the globe that could generate the meteorological conditions to produce droughts. Oh mother, and how does it work? Well, you see, this is a diagram of how it works. They take advantage of the effect produced by the atmospheric layer, rebounded through the waves they emit, and with that they can project what they want to any area of the planet. You understand climate changes? What a surprise. And we are being told that there is pollution, these cars and these factories release this. Of course, it is true that this helps, but is it enough? Meanwhile, let's see something else. Al Gore. Does he sound familiar to you? Who was Al Gore? Who also presented himself as a candidate for the President of the United States, or this man, Al Gore, who by voting seemed like he won, and instead, for somewhat strange reasons, he is not elected, and instead they stay with Bush. And Al Gore seems to be retiring from politics, at least it seems. And what is the prophet of climate change doing? Well, he dedicates himself to going around the world giving lectures and warning that within a decade there could be an enormous misfortune because we are destroying the climate. Does Al Gore also have something to do with the Masonic world? Investigate a little. I'll leave it in your hands. So, let's see if hurricanes and these things happen because of us, because of our fault, because we're just polluting, okay? Let's look at this Vanguard newspaper. We're going to bring out certain things. National Hurricane Center, the NCH in Miami. If we all agree that the impact of carbon emissions on hurricanes will not be detectable for decades, these gentlemen came to this conclusion, that the carbon emissions that affect so much is not detectable for decades yet. So then? This was stated by Chris Lancy, Head of Science and Operations at the NCH. The devastating cyclones of recent years have nothing to do with climate change. And Al Gore is saying, yes, who is fooling us? Is this a great lie? For some reason? With a purpose? Even I.N.W.O describes as crazy the idea that Katrina is a product of the greenhouse effect. And they are the real specialists in the matter, not people like us who give our opinions, okay? At present, global warming is not a significant factor in explaining the record number of Atlantic hurricanes in 2005, nor when there were 27 tropical storms compared to the average of 11 and 15 hurricanes. It is skyrocketing, and the question is, do we cause it because we are causing climate change? Or are they provoking it to us, telling us that we are to blame? It continues. We are not seeing a trend toward greater hurricane intensity due to climate change, but rather a very active cycle caused by cyclical increases in water surface temperature and atmospheric changes, Lancy said. Well, precisely through HAARP, it is very easy to heat areas of the Earth, in these cases the water, so that the temperature rises a little more and cyclones are guaranteed. They can change the air currents also. They can even make the hurricanes change direction. Well, let's see something else. Valery Statsenko of the Russian Meteorological Service declared to the daily Novye Izvestila changes in the ionosphere and magnetosphere influence the climate, and if these changes are reinforced with powerful facilities, like those of HAARP that are also in other places, it is possible to vary the climate globally. Who is saying it? You see, the Russian Meteorological Service. Let's see more things. Let's go back to the cards. Volcanoes. What? Volcanoes also? Volcanoes have always erupted. Remember the one in Pompeii, right? Or the history of Catalonia in the area of Olot, which was depopulated because the volcano started to boom, and it was repopulated with people who came from Ireland. That's why around here we have surnames like Cross and so on, who are people from their descendants. But why are volcanoes also erupting more than ever? Could it be that they are provoked? Let's see more things. This page, what is this page? It is a report from the United States Air Force where they present concepts and technologies to dominate space in the future until 2025, using many of the elements mentioned so far. If you take this report in English, it is quite extensive. You will realize that everything we have been showing so far is nothing more than things that they already have to do. and that thanks to that, they will cause a global situation in which they are going to achieve their objectives, and of which some of us have already spoken. Others are still a bit up in the air. We are going to deal with it in the latest prophecies that we're going to comment on here. And here we start with another card. They have also sold us the river that we are the ones who are killing the world. Which, curiously, what idea has been promoted to us in recent years? A very good one, by the way. Recycling, right? Is it wrong to recycle? It's very good, isn't it? What is the symbol of recycling? They are 3 arrows, which chase each other in the shape of a pyramid. In the shape of a pyramid. How strange, huh? Another coincidence. Don't worry, it must be that. Well, you see, the way things are intertwined, the idea that is being sold to us is we are killing Mother Earth. Where is the concept of Mother Earth coming from? Does anyone know? The New Age movement uses this a lot. Well, it's nothing more than pre-Christian cults, worshippers of other gods and strange forces. And this has been introduced into our usual language as Mother Earth. Well, the Earth is not our mother. This concept does not appear at all in the biblical concept, not at all. However, they are sneaking it into us in a tremendous way. But what does this mean about recycling? It makes us think about something, that if we do it, like everyone else, it is something global. We are all participating in it. Therefore, we all need to be aware of the same laws. Globalization. You understand? This is the concept, and recycling does nothing more than support this concept. Let's continue recycling because that is good. But look at how they use good things when the background is really different. That means, like in England, if you don't recycle, they fine you, someone is saying. This is going to get here shortly. It has already been mentioned. Yes, it is already in Barcelona. And now, also notice, on the other hand, we have what we have been dealing with. And on the other, well, who fights against what is being done to the environment? This card tells us eco-guerrillas. Who could be the eco-guerrillas? It could be Greenpeace, right? Dig into Greenpeace, and you will see where it takes you also. You will see how the hand of Freemasonry is there again. It's curious, Well, doesn't this lead us to think again about what we have been exposing so far? About creating confrontation so that a situation becomes obvious and something happens? Well, they do it in all aspects. Let's see things that it uses. And I'll tell you one thing. This game consists of 450 cards. It's even had extensions, right? Here I'm just going to show you some of the things that the Illuminati use to create, manipulate our thoughts, and lead us to the concepts they want so that we can reach their goal, okay? One of the things they use is Hollywood. And you already know, as we said the other time, that if you look at who the owners of these large companies are, you know that they are Jews of Luciferian Freemasonry. This is not a joke. That is why the messages that Hollywood films transmit are sometimes much more important than we imagine. Not everything is just a movie and that's it. What else do they use? Video games, logically. Aren't video games idiotizing the kids? I mean, there may be some that are worth it, but as a general rule, what are they causing? And what are they going to cause? Which one sells the most? Those of war, right? Of course. Killing, indiscriminately, the concept of violence and many others, right? Take a look also at this curious card. Gay activists? What does this have to do with Freemasonry? Well, it does, a lot. Start pulling the thread and you will see how they are behind the gay movement. Notice why since such a short time ago, there is so much motivation for gay things to be good, and that if you think that this is not logical, it is not normal, you are a retrograde. That you are a homophobic on top of that. So you feel guilty. Do you see how they create this? Well, in few years, they have manipulated public opinion. I remember as a kid that if there was a boy who was already a little like that, well, everyone talked about him, poor thing, right? Of course, that wasn't right either, of course. But in what way have they been sneaking it in as something good? How many TV presenters are appearing on national television who are like this, who express it, and how many characters from Hollywood, from all places, who express themselves like this? And now that's the good thing. It's correct to accept that, and that is what you have to do. What does that involve? Well, it's logical. If everyone was gay, the world wouldn't last long, right? That's quite logical. But hey, this also implies corruption. Although it may sound harsh to say so. I don't know if there are any gays here or not. I don't know, right? Maybe I'm screwing up, but it's the truth. There is even a man who wrote a book about what being gay comes from, in truth, very deeply, and how this can be solved. Because in truth, it is not from birth, as we have been tried to believe. Lately, it is not from birth, but from circumstances that have affected you since you were very young. Things change drastically, but hey, I'm not going to get into psychology now. What happens is that they change the perspective to how things are seen. To the good, bad, and to the bad, good. Well, let's move forward. What else do they use? What? Nobel Peace Prize? Careful, they seem like antagonistic concepts. Nobel Peace Prize, and instead motivated by them? You know, Mr. Nobel was a Freemason. I suppose some of you must know this. And have you noticed the peace symbol? Which is it? What is that symbol? Does it remind you of something we talked about here recently? The broken cross? Like the one on the staff that is carried by the Pope? And the last popes? That was nothing more than the symbol of peace for them. But in truth, it is the complete opposite of Christianity. It is the image of Jesus in tatters. See? And that is the concept of peace. What things, eh? What else? Feminist movements also? Well, yes. Investigate a little in depth how it was originated and you will see how Freemasonry was behind it again. What else? Red Cross. The Red Cross. You know that the Red Cross was created by Freemasons? It is always promoted when it goes to places to do good, when there has been a misfortune. Well, the Freemasons also have the other side of the coin. I'm not talking about the usual low-grade Freemason here. You know what I mean. We're talking about Freemasons from above. A misfortune is created, and then aid is brought. Okay? What an easy way to make your things go in much better way. Someone comments, furthermore, it is one of the things that appear on the internet, that the Freemasons, their principle is to do good, right? It is a way, but I wonder, isn't it a way to test vaccines and test things in those places as well? Well, there are precisely cards, like the ones we have seen and other elements, that we have let go by a little, but deep down they are showing us that many of these kind of illnesses do not happen for no reason, but because they are motivated, provoked. And furthermore, there is even evidence that when certain organizations that belong to certain groups go to these places, suddenly many people get vaccinated, and after a while, the opposite happens. Why is this? And this person answers again, because they do tests. And Victor answers, well, here we are going a bit off topic, right? Well, this card is a bit interesting, huh? Can you see that there are two gentlemen with a Bible in their hands? But what ring are they wearing? One wears a ring and another wears something on his lapel. A sign of what? Of the Illuminati, the pyramid again. How can it be religion on the one hand and Illuminati on the other? How does this fit? You know, I presented a topic a while ago in another place where I precisely demonstrated, I proved, and in an obvious way, that everyone could consult it, and if you want one day we will discuss it also, how precisely behind the groups that are supporting Bush in the United States government are precisely the religious groups. The Christian extreme right wing, that's when you start pulling the thread, it takes you again to the same place. People involved in Freemasonry and who are working for ecumenism. Do you remember that we talked about ecumenism, about uniting Catholic and Protestant religions and Jews in the same bag? Well, everything has the same thing, the same origin. Of course, a problem arises and religion is used as a means to confront, right? How sad is that? For religion, which is a good thing, to be used for evil, right? Let's see something else. Televangelists. Well, yes, also theirs. On that same topic, we also checked it. What else? Attention to this card. Moral minority. In this card game, sometimes a letter changes or a word changes because they are established organizations. And if they say it clearly, they take a risk. You understand? So, what do? In truth, in the United States, there is no moral minority. There is the moral majority, which is a tremendous pressure group on the United States government. That is why Bush also established prayer when the sessions are going to begin the Capitol. Everyone has to pray and so on, and a lot of other things, right? Of laws that have been forged. What else? Let's see. Bush wants to make religion prevail in the law. And, well, you see, the Christian right wing supports Bush. It says in this newspaper clipping from here in Girona, Bush's presence is diluting the limits of separation. Pay attention to this, because this has a lot to do with the prophecy that we are going to discuss. Bush's presence is diluting the limits of separation between church and state. You know that in the United States, church and state are separate, right? It is a free country. Well, he is making this dilute, and they are getting closer and closer together. The prophecy is going to talk about this. We will deal with this, because this is going to affect our lives in a way that you will be frozen when you know it, really chilled. The Supreme Court of the United States. We also see who is behind them. The same people. Let's see the next image. Don't miss this. The Capitol. Plague of demons. Oh my. It means that who is in charge in the United States Capitol? Well, the satanic powers. And theoretically, the United States initially set themselves up as the land of freedom and Christianity. Protestantism was fleeing from the Catholic part, yes? And someone mentions, and also this week, perhaps due to political connotations of Hugo Chavez, he said, "The devil has been here," referring to United States. Yes, it goes in this way. Although they are also being used to create the confrontation. In other words, we should never forget this, that they work on both sides, okay? What else? Now look at a series of Masonic groups, also used by them. The Templars. What else? The Rosicrucians, who, by the way, I already told you that Pope John the 23rd was a Rosicrucian, according to what one of the Freemasons I know informed me, and who was the main promoter of ecumenism. With him, the Second Vatican Council was created to promote unity of religions, and that is why the popes, those that have existed until now, have been working harder and harder for this, and the one who is there now is working hard for that, although that also entails confrontation with the Muslim world, but that is already what they want deep down. What else? Fraternal orders. Well, here you see the little animal he is carrying. It could be an owl. It looks like a penguin. I don't know. It looks more of an owl, probably. Because fraternal orders, what are they? Well, the Skull and Bones, for example. are a fraternal order who the Bush gentlemen belong to, right? And other characters. They don't belong to it? Well, here you see, taken from the Vanguard newspaper, the secret of Bush and Kerry, that he was the other man who ran for president, and that the two are members of the elitist initiatory sect, Skull and Bones, with the sign of the skull and bones. The sign of pirates, right? That we should also have to delve into that, because perhaps we would get surprises from the concept of the typical pirate. Pirates were not pirates just to get rich, but something also moved them. But anyway, that's another story. But you see, they both belong to lodges of a Masonic type, right? What coincidences? The card of the Gnomes of Zurich. Can you see the symbol with these wheels like gears? Do you know what they are? Rotarians have only one. But basically it is this. The Rotarians are also linked, or someone has discovered, that it is also another very important Masonic lodge. The Gnomes of Zurich. And the Lions? The Lions International, but they are a different type within the Freemasons, although they do similar things deep down, right? It's just that, well, those of us who are Barca supporters, those things hurt us a little, that they now carry UNICEF propaganda, because it is a very nice thing, apparently, and very good, but behind them, they are involved in the same. You understand? Well, this is another topic. What are we going to do? But notice that the power of these people is 9 out of 9. The maximum is 10 out of 10. Therefore, they are people with a lot of power. By the way, you dig into the Rotarians, and you will see who is their president of the Rotary Club. Well, nothing more than Tony Rothschild. This name of the Rothschilds sound familiar, right? They are the leadership of Luciferian Freemasonry, owners of world banking, along with the Rockefellers. Well, you see, they work together. And what do they do besides this? Well, in addition, there are financial contributions, concessions, so that these people do much better, right? You see how when you start pulling the thread, everything comes out? And these are the official pages of the Rotarians, right? I didn't do it by machine to scam you, so you can access all this. Everything always leads us to the same thing. Always. Let's see a bit more. Someone says, now that we're on the topic, can I ask you a question to see if I understand it better? It is news from yesterday. This thing about the Catholic Church being withdrawn. The direct contributions. Yes. Yes, because as we are all seeing that things are not as we see them, how do we look at this properly? Because at first glance it seems like the government is going to save money, or the church is not going to receive as much money. Well, they agree because they have been raised to 0.7, which before had much less involuntary contributions and such, right? This, if you want, we will also talk about when it is time to talk about another topic, okay? Keep this in mind if you want. Well, look at what Compton wrote, who was a committed Catholic editor who was very angry with the infiltration of Freemasonry into the Catholic Church, explaining how Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, was financed in 1766 in his efforts to establish precisely that, the teachers of the Illuminati. Look at what he explains. He says, he, Weishaupt, received financial backing from a group of bankers from the house of, can you guess? Who? Rothschild. It was under his direction that the long-term worldwide plans of the Illuminati were drawn up. Notice how always when you start pulling the thread, boom, everything takes us there. Things that theoretically seem to have nothing to do with each other. And little is said about this, right? Do you hear in the news that they are telling you all these things, arguing it, showing evidence? No, right? Why would it be? And let's see, since they have so much capital, what do? Market manipulation. Well, this one is funny because you can see clearly a scale here and the pyramid with the little eye completely tilting the markets towards one side or the other. Of course, if they are the owners of the money, what a way to manipulate the markets and mess up tremendous economic situations, right? What else? Oh my. Bank merger. Look at these little fish. one is eating the other as bank mergers. How long has it been since banks have been merging with others and getting bigger and bigger? It's incredible. But look at this detail. This fish, what symbol does it carry? The yen, okay? Japanese currency. And the one that is going to be eaten, what symbol does it have? The pound sterling. And what is the other one that is going to be eaten? The dollar. And the other one, is that the euro? Careful. We are talking about the 1990s. Did the euro exist? No, there was a purpose, an attempt, which was called the ECU, do you remember? Which was a real failure, but as was already foreseen in the plans of Freemasonry, they wanted a single currency, hey? Always think about globalization. They wanted a single currency because it is easier with a single currency to give one hit and everything sinks, okay? If not, the other way, the stock markets are different, and one place does not affect the same way to the others. That is why in Asia they did the same. That's why there was that catastrophe in the Asian stock markets at the time. Could it be the euro? Well, you see, what things happen. Let's see more things. Okay, Swiss bank accounts. Which box of these little metal doors is open and money and gold bars peeking out? We see different numbers in correlation. Which one is left open? The 666, 666. With this, what are they telling us? Well, that in Switzerland, there is great capital. Do you know whose? From everywhere, they say. From everywhere, but do you know who else? I think mine isn't there either. There is a certain church with great economic power that you have mentioned now. It has a lot of money put there, right? And curiously, it is the square of 666. So as an indication, because we have not yet talked about the 666 in detail, which is really shocking, we already see that it is also linked in addition to something else that we will see, the world economy. Commercial transactions. Let's see something else. In Switzerland, well, this drawing is a bit cute. A utility knife. What do they have in Switzerland? Gold bullions, chocolate, watches, weapons, and cuckoos. Cuckoo. Look at this text. Well, other countries, like Japan, and some others that I'm saving, that in a little while are going to come out and are used by these gentlemen for a specific objective, also appear in the cards, right? Let's see this text, Revelation 13 from 15 to 18. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Remember, we read this? And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. What a coincidence, isn't it? That what was written 2,000 years ago and mentions commercial transactions, because deep down here there is an implication that no one will be able to buy and sell if there is not an authorization from a certain number. It also appears in the Illuminati games related to money, although we will see how it also is something else, as I have told you before. Let's move forward. The Federal Reserve. Now, is the Federal Reserve of the United States of the nation of the United States? Is it a central bank of the government? No, the Federal Reserve of the United States depends on whom? Of private banks. Which, do you know who their owners are? Well, yes, you guessed it, them. And there is a lot of evidence. What else? Oil multinationals. Oil companies. Well, they are also behind them. What else? The OPEC. These gentlemen, you see, also with their It's all triangle. They have a good time with their Rolls Royce, their beautiful women, etc., etc. They are also placed behind. Why, what does all this do? Well, manipulates the economy through oil. The invention of manipulating the economy through oil has been a great invention to create brutal crises. And we will see it happen again. What else? Monopolies. This is curious. Since when are large monopolies being created? It's not that long ago, right? But you have to be aware that there are companies that are making, well, huge ones. That hasn't happened in 50 years, or 40, or 30. But we are going to see something interesting. This writing is by Helen White as well, written in the 1900s, at the beginning or end of 1800s. She talks about workers' guilds and totally relates them to Freemasonry, to unions, okay? That is why she says that we should not join unions, because behind them, just like the political parties, are the Masons directing the issues wherever they want. Whether they are from one side or another, they are involved. And look at what it says here. The work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future. That is our work, she says, which will soon come upon them with blinding force. In the world, gigantic monopolies will be formed. This is a prediction like no other, because in their time, that did not happen, and now it does. Can you guess things just like that? Like this lady was continually saying that she was getting everything right? I am incapable. As much as I want to, I can see clues through the things that are happening, but if I didn't have a notion of the prophecies, to know how to put these things together, I would be, as they say in football, offside. You understand? Well, then they carry on saying more things, but we are going to move forward. The cards again. What causes all this? New World Order, energy crisis. Of course, if they have all this enormous power, what are they going to cause in the end? Well, a crisis of enormous dimensions. Well, as you can see, all the cars, refueling gas the best they can. And you see what a nice sign there is at the gas station, right? And what does an energy crisis cause? You know it, right? Well, the total economic chaos. And that is a very difficult situation to endure, the energy crisis. Let's look at some issues. Policies that are also used by them. Secret services. Secret services seem to only depend on a certain country, right? In general, that's it. But the secret services are also used to do things because they are behind them to provoke confrontation issues. Let's see more things. What else do they use? Israel? Does it say Israel here? This is very strong, isn't it? Because if Israel is being the puppet in their hands, it must be for something. Do you remember the letter we read about the 3 world wars? Israel is going to be one of those sides precisely to confront the Muslim world. Well, you already have them here. What else? The elders of Zion. What are these gentlemen? Have you heard of them? Does it sound familiar to you? Well, I'm going to read you the description of the card. An ancient and subtle brotherhood. The elders know well the art of conspiracy. They can reorganize your entire power structure. This must take place on your turn and requires the action and an action from your Illuminati. Therefore, they are nothing more than a great Masonic lodge that is behind the Zionist movements that want to make Israel, well, what they are going to try to do, that we will see. It seems that they are behind it. Let's see some more things. Of course, if we have the Zionists on the one hand and we have to create a confrontation, then who do they have to use? Well, of course, Islamic Jihad, that are also being manipulated by them to create confrontation. And we see the news and say, well, they got angry because they can't stand each other, so they shot and bombed each other. Yeah? Why? Well, all this has been worked on over the years to create the current situation and the worst one that is yet to come. Let's see another card. International Communist Conspiracy. I already told you once that the check with which Karl Marx was paid to create the Communist Treaty still exists in the British Museum. So those are not jokes. And by whom was it paid? Well, it was paid by the Rothschilds. What things, right? That they create communism. Rothschild, remember the name Shield of the Reds or Protector of the Reds, when his original name was Mayer. Why did they change the name for this? Well, to create a communist world, supporting it, while the others, the Rockefellers, supported the other side, and they also created the confrontations that generated the previous World War, among other things. Let's see more things. What countries do they use? Russia. Yikes. To be using Russia, of course, they are communists, right? And China. Now, why these two cards, Russia and China? You know, I've told you before that later we will talk about a book called Daniel, and it's chapter 11, with which you are going to be very surprised, because you are going to see an enormous parallelism between what we have been saying and what has been appearing here now. Let's see another one. The United Nations, the UN. How? But if it is a place where dialogue is held and peace in the world is sought, well, the UN is nothing more than a center of Freemasonry. The largest in the world, and not because the card says so. You just have to pull a little thread yourselves and you will realize that this is so. Historians like Ricardo de la Cierva, well, even declared that Fraga himself had told him that both the European Parliament, which was also saturated with the Freemasons, he also cited how the UN is more or less the same, but much crazier. And we are going to see more things. NATO. Well, NATO also. And what is NATO? Well, the armed part of this whole mess, right? Well, also used by them, of course, the world on two sides. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, where the Allies are, but of course, the Allies, and who are the non-aligned? That now there is so much controversy with Venezuela, Cuba, Korea, Russia, China. It's curious, right? But here, we'll see more of this. What else? And what's up with this whole situation? What is going to be caused? Well, look, curiously in this card game also appears what previously seemed like what could become or not. Well, now you have it, the Third World War. Notice the smoke, where there is also the little triangle with an eye. You see it? Well, the Third World War is going to come, and these are not jokes, because everything that was prepared has been achieved. They are going to achieve this in the same way, because notice that before we have read a text which says, because nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. It is describing not just a little war, it is a great confrontation, because in previous verses, as we have not read, it talks about wars and rumors of wars. But that was not the end, it says. Therefore, it makes a full stop between one verse and another. And remember that involved plagues, famine, and earthquakes in different places. Notice what Ellen White writes, talking about a future. Navies will go down, and human lives will be sacrificed by millions. When do people die by the millions in major war conflicts? And what denotes that it is a military conflict she is talking about here? Entire navies will sink. Navies are warships, not fishing boats. You understand? And that happens when there's a conflict. We are going to see more things to advance a little, because I don't know if we have much recording left. 25 minutes. Well, let's go further on a bit, because if not, we won't finish. I would like to read this page in its entirety, because it is worth it. Look, War in the Last Days is the heading of this, right? Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the farthest parts of the earth. Jeremiah 25:32. 2,500 or 2,600 years ago. A situation that describes the latest days, and that's Ellen White. Notice how she describes it in several of her writings. Soon grievous troubles will rise among the nations, trouble that will not cease until Jesus comes. Sometimes to one of you this may sound new, the coming of Jesus, but Jesus was already born, right? Remember that there are prophecies that said he would return. He left and would come back, okay? We're going to talk about these because they are very interesting. As never before, we need to press together, serving him who has prepared his throne in the heavens and whose kingdom ruleth over all. God has not forsaken his people, and our strength lies in not forsaking him. The judgments of God are in the land, the wars and rumors of wars, the destruction by fire and flood say clearly that the time of trouble, which is to increase until the end, is very near at hand. In other words, do not expect that the world situation is going to be fixed, but precisely the opposite. We have no time to lose. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Look at these words. The prophecies of the 11th of Daniel have almost reached their final fulfillment. She is speaking, and we will see later when we deal with this prophecy, that this chapter describes a story to us. That for many years things have happened, but at the end there are some verses that are framed for the time of the end, and where they denote truly impressive things, that you are going to freeze when you see them, and which curiously describes in what context the world is shaken by the spirit of war. The last verses of this chapter appear in a context of war. Remember this because you will need it very much when we discuss this topic. And it says that these verses are already ending their final fulfillment. There is still a little left, it seems. At least this was written around 1900 or so. Soon, strife among the nations will break out with an intensity that we do not now anticipate. So we can't even imagine it. The present is a time of overwhelming interest to all living. For us, more than for her time yet, of course. Rulers and statesmen, men who occupy positions of trust and authority, thinking men and women of all classes, have their attention fixed. I'm going to get dizzy. Have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They are watching the strained, restless relations that exist among the nations. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element, and they realize that something great and decisive is about to take place, that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis. A moment of respite has been graciously given us of God. Every power lent us of heaven is now to be used in working for those perishing in ignorance. Therefore, do you understand why I am speaking to you here? Because if I do not do this, I do not do what God wants. You realize? There must be no delay. The truth must be proclaimed in the dark places of the earth. And dark places on earth, forgive me, but even here are dark places, because people don't know this. It is not necessary to go to the end of Patagonia, which you can also go to, by the way, but anyway. A great work is to be done, and to those who know the truth for this time, this work has been entrusted. In the last scenes of this earth's history, war will rage. So don't be disappointed if you expect there to be peace. There won't be one, but rather a great war will happen. There will be pestilence, plague and famine. The waters of the deep will overflow their boundaries. Property and life will be destroyed by fire and flood, etc., etc., etc. Look at what the situation is looking like for us in the near future. Yes, right? But let's not forget what happens after this. Before we have said that it is the return of Jesus. And can that be bad? Where is the quote taken from? This quote is taken from a book called, it is a compilation of her writings, Maranatha, page 174. Let's keep moving forward to see another card. We are already finishing the topic because if not, we will run out of tape. Also notice what happens. Martial law. And we can see here the White House guarded by some soldiers with the triangle on. What does martial law mean? Well, the army in the streets. And why does the army come in the streets? Well, because there have been some tremendous uproars and we have to put things in order no matter what, right? And that is the situation they are going to create. What else? Law and order in the New World Order. You can go through the tube with a clubbing, but you will pass. What else? Oh my. This card is a good one. Vatican City. A pope. And what does he have on his mitre? On his little hat? The Illuminati triangle. Does the Vatican papacy have a relationship with the Illuminati? With Luciferian Freemasonry? It has become clear through the conferences that we have given that this is where they go. Well, we are still going to see something more in the coming days. New World Order, peace in our time. Tanks with cobwebs. What does this mean? Well, there will come a moment when there will be peace for a little while, a short period of time. And when everything seems to be going well, finally, someone will appear. But first let's see something else to relate the topic a little with what we are saying. Pope Benedict XVI urged governments to nuclear disarmament and warned of the danger posed by religious fanaticism. In the speech he gave during the traditional Mass that the Holy See celebrates on New Year's Day, World Day of Peace in St. Peter's Square, he also explained for the first time why he chose the name Benedict, which is closely related to his commitment to working for peace. Well, thank goodness, because if working for peace means making the statements he has made, we are doing well. But hey, you see, he's been talking about all this for a long time, right? It doesn't come from now. Here we see the final card, or one of the important cards of this game, Bavaria Illuminati, Illuminati of Bavaria. 10 in 10 in power. Therefore, they are at the top of power. And what is to happen with all this crisis and these decisive moments in the history of humanity? Messiah. Messiah? What is it? Messiah is the anointed one. He is the Christ. In this game, it is foreseen, which is nothing more than a plot, a script of what they are going to do until the end, that a Messiah is going to appear. Focus on the situation. Here, where are these people looking? Towards the ground? They're looking up. And it seems to be a great light what they see, right? Because their faces are illuminated and they are all happy to see this Messiah. Is this Messiah the Christ? The Jesus of the prophecies? The one we are going to talk also about to try to prove that he can return soon? Or is it the Messiah who, as we saw, is their Lucifer, the bearer of light? We are going to talk about these prophecies in detail, because to think that when this character arrives, he will captivate the entire world, and if this character is not the authentic Messiah, it means that the world will follow him like sheep. And remember that the letter said that sooner or later he will manifest himself after the Third World War, the moment to proclaim to the world in an open way the great doctrine of Lucifer in a total, overwhelming way. But that there was a minority who would be against that, remember? Well, it means that this Messiah is not the authentic one. The one who is going to come first is not the real one, and he is going to captivate everyone. Then we will see what this character is going to say, how we will know who is who, because this is going to happen in a short time, because the Third World War is going to come and it is not going to take long. But some other very important thing must happen first, and it has to do with Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, the United States, and elsewhere. But we will talk about that further on. Victor, that person is hailed as the Messiah by millions of people. For millions of people, yes. As a person acclaimed. Yes, yes. Only one Messiah can be on play at a time. We'll talk about this a little later, okay? Look at these writings by Ellen White. Satan will manifest himself among men as a majestic being of dazzling brightness, resembling the description of the Son of God given by John in the Revelation. The glory that surrounds him is unsurpassed by anything that mortal eyes have yet beheld. The shout of triumph rings out upon the air, "Christ has come! Christ has come!" The people prostrate themselves in adoration before him, while he lifts up his hands and pronounces a blessing upon them, as Christ blessed his disciples when he was upon the earth. This is powerful, right? She is describing to us that one who comes is Lucifer himself posing as Christ. Furthermore, Satan will not be allowed to appear the exact way Jesus will come. And how will Jesus come? We have to know in what way Jesus is going to come, to know in what way Satan will not be able to imitate him. Thanks to that, we will be able to know who is who. Look at this other text, Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Why do you see misfortunes go so far, that they multiply so much at all levels? Why do you see that the political situation is tense everywhere? Why do you see that the world is leading to tremendous chaos? And even the biggest idiot passing by on the street can smell that this is not going well. Well, precisely because the devil knows that he has little time. He is tightening his grip, and he has to do that in order to come pretending to be Christ. This is a page from the Christian Electronic Library, which is Catholic, and notice what it says here. Sects pose a very serious problem to the ecumenical movement of church unity, as has been widely observed and studied. It cannot be hidden that the rise of sects, the appearance of new religious movements, constitutes an obstacle to the progress of ecumenism among Christians and interreligious dialogue with non-Christians. Fundamentalist sects resist the ecumenical meeting. And who is classified among these new religious movements that they name as new religious movements? Well, study a little, because you see that the people who are saying what I am saying here are classified as such. People who will not be seen well for the unity of churches, because saying what we say dismantles their entire argument by passing off as good what is bad. And they do this with the objective that Satan comes impersonating Jesus. Incredible, right? But do you see how things are all coming together? Well, we are going to see more things that will finish tying all this up in great detail. We're going to finish with a text found in the book of Psalms, which were some songs that the Jews sang thousands of years ago, and that is Psalm 46 from 1 to 3. If this situation can distress us, someone even said before here, well, what a panorama awaits us, right? That our morale is going down the drain. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. I hope we are part of this group of people who are going to think this, because if we think otherwise, in the end there will only be two sides, either this one or the other. There will be no in between. You will have already seen that law and order is going to work, and in a pretty strong way, right? Well, this is today's topic. Here we finish. The next topic you can choose. Do you want to talk about prophecies directly or talk about the 666? Come on, I'll leave it to you. Choose it yourselves. Let's do something. Let's leave 666 for the time. We have already had enough more and more data about what 666 is to finish adding what it is going to be, or what the 666 is. First, we will deal with a series of fulfilled prophecies, and some that are being fulfilled now, okay? And then we will talk about prophecies that are in the very near future, so we can understand for sure what the 666 is, okay?